but it's about a Jewish boy who made it good.
Einstein?
Before him. Rashi. The Jews are interested in Rashi.
So what's Rashi going to do with next week?
So, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. The Torah portion this week's Vayechi.
Yeah.
The last portion of the first book of the Torah. Could you believe we're already finishing the first book?
Yep, hopefully the days will start getting longer.
Wow.
That's what you told me last time.
New technology.
You can't wait.
Microphones, clip-on microphones.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, Rabbi Farkash had a meeting, went later, he asked me to step in. And I understand that those who are here are not on vacation somewhere in Hawaii or somewhere. You're here locally, so it's nice
Because it doesn't snow here.
Doesn't snow here, right? No need to run away. It's not. I'm curious whether anybody would notice if I talked about a topic other than the one that was in the email.
Go for it.
Does anybody remember what the email said? What the topic was?
Yes, Jacob.
Oh.
Yeah.
I read it.
Okay.
But that's
There's reading it, and then there's remembering what the topic, also. So pretty impressed that it was not only read, but also that you remember what the topic that was announced. I only looked at the email 2 minutes ago, so I didn't. I didn't know what the topic was. The life of Yaakov in Mitzrayim was the topic, and that's how the Parsha starts, about the life of Yaakov. And Yaakov lived in the land of Egypt and the land of Mitzrayim. By the way, it's page 268 in the Chumash Parshas Vayechi. He lived for 147 years. And the Parsha talks about how Yaakov gives blessings before he passed away. And the Parsha starts with the blessings that he gave to Menashe and Ephraim, and then to his 12 sons, and finally the passing of Yaakov and his burial with the very big funeral the state funeral for Yaakov, and then at the end of the parsha we read about the passing of Yosef and his burial, or kind of temporary burial in Mitzrayim until he would later be moved to when we left Mitzrayim to take him along. He made his brothers swear that they would take his remains out of Mitzrayim. So, what do you think? Why were his best years in Mitzrayim? It says that Yaakov's best years, Vayechi Yaakov Veretz Mitzrayim, Shavas Reishana, that commentators say that his best years were the years in Mitzrayim. When he approaches Paro, his first interview with Paro asks him, "How old are you?" And he said, "I'm 130 years old, and my years are all bad." And it was a difficult life for 130 years. And earlier in his life, he had trouble with Esav.
Yeah, family peace.
The Esav trouble started from the very beginning. Always the confrontation with Esav, then running away from Esav, and then living with Lavan. That wasn't very nice, very happy life with Lavan. And then as soon as he left Lavan, the Shechem story, and after the Shechem story, then he has the Yosef story. Rachel passed away before, Rachel, and Shechem, then Yosef. And then finally gets to Mitzrayim, 130 years old. And he says, so far it's been all, it's been Tzuros, yeah. So what were the best years of Yaakov's life? In Mitzrayim, here he had, Yosef was now reunited, family unity, family harmony. Esav wasn't a problem anymore. Lavan wasn't a problem anymore. He had nachas from his children, grandchildren. Finally, retirement. Right, 17 years. His best years. Why were they his best years? So, family being united, good reason.
But also united with peace, because when they were in Israel after Rachel died, there wasn't peace because Joseph and the brothers did not get along. But in Mitzrayim they did, because all that whole envious or competition or whatever was no longer there. So that tranquility can mean a lot in a family.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it from
I agree. If anybody is has had family drama with which family hasn't, whether it's with siblings, with parents, with in-laws, with there's something nice about all getting along.
Yes.
That's that's definitely a good reason for it to be good years.
He was grieving, and so he lost his spirituality because he doubted Hashem.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
also
got
very.
that.
Thank you. So he got his Ruach HaKodesh, his relationship with Hashem during the 22 years when he was away from Yosef wasn't there because he was in a not in the right mood and not in the right mindset, and in order to merit the revelation of the divine presence, you have to be in a happy state of mind. Being depressed, and you don't have that. So he had upgraded relationship with Hashem. But still, how is it that in Mitzrayim, which is the lowest of all places, it's called Ervas Haaretz. Out of the whole planet, the worst or the lowest level is Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim was where they had the greatest level of impurity anywhere. The behavior of Mitzrayim is referenced to a lot in the Torah as what to stay far away from. The Egyptian behaviors, the Egyptian idolatry, the Egyptian immorality. It was a pretty low place. How is it that in such a place, Yaakov had his best years?
Well, with them living in Goshen, they were separated from the regular Egyptians. The Egyptians didn't want to associate with them because they were shepherds, which put them on another level to be segregated. And being segregated, they were happy.
Yeah, that's and along those lines, the Rebbe says that the key was that they had that. In last week's Parsha, we read about how Yaakov sent Yehuda ahead of him to prepare. What did he prepare? Yosef was doing all the preparing. Yosef said, "I'll take care of you." What did Yehuda need to do?
Set up a yeshiva.
Yehuda went to set up the yeshiva, to set up a Beis Medrash, to set up the Jewish Public Library of Goshen, where they can have classes and have a cheder. And have the children, the adults, everybody, the place to learn Torah, to prepare spiritually for their arrival. And it was because of this spiritual place, and like you said, they weren't in the Egyptian, all into the Egyptian culture. They were separated in the land of Goshen. Had the Jewish schools and opportunities to learn Torah, and that's how even in Mitzrayim can have his best years, which everything in the Torah is a lesson for us. Because even in our time of exile, and even when we're in a Mitzrayim kind of place, we have to, make it our best years by spending time learning Torah and supporting Torah institutions. And the advertisement for the Cheder.'s fundraising campaign today, I'm sure you all heard about it.
We did.
If you were under a rock, maybe you didn't hear about it.
Didn't he also, before he came, he was always worried about invasions from the people around him? And now that he's there in Goshen, there is no invasions. So he feels at peace that way too. That was
nice.
That warrior feeling.
Well, also Joseph was in charge.
Yeah.
Well, but they're not going to be invaded like there was always that constant group and that warring going on there.
Yeah, so that's another factor in making his 17 years in Mitzrayim to be his best years.
I still have a question about
it.
So, how was it possible they were not sending, or was not accepted by Egyptian people or Egyptian government as people who will sit in one place, because they were shepherds? It means they were moving from place to place, and one tribe going this way and another person going to another way. How they could sit in one, learn Torah in one place, or go to the library, because library it means something in the city, at least small city, or yeshiva it means small city again.
So I think I imagine, and this is my what I personally imagine the situation was. The land of Goshen is a big region. It's a fertile part of Egypt. It's you have in Egypt, you have along the Nile River, they had canals going out to people can live all along the river. But then at the end of the river, where the delta, where it spreads out, there you have pasture, you have a lot of green. So they had a whole region there that they can pasture the animals, they can take care of the animals. But even if you're a shepherd, like it was the case when Yosef went to visit his brothers, when they were taking the animals around, their families were settled and they had their fixed location, or their shtetl. And then they'd take a walk one day, go this way for a walk with animals. The next day, go the other way. So taking care of the animals was a way of life. But I don't know if it meant that they couldn't have one shtetl. They have one shtetl. That's where the yeshiva is. That's where the library is. That's where they also had the animals. But truth is that part of the animal situation was really an excuse. We read in last week's Parsha, Yosef tells, Parah says, if you know that, when he asks them, what do you do with your shepherds, right? Yosef tells his brothers, when he asks you that, tell him you're shepherds and you want to be in Goshen. And then Parah says, well, if you know that they have some really good, skilled, and talented guys, then take care of my animals, right? So, he declines Paro's, offer to give them jobs as taking care of Paro's animals. They were shepherds not so much because this was their only skill that they got from their parents to be shepherds. Mostly they were shepherds because they wanted to be able to dedicate themselves to spiritual pursuits and not be always in the market, in the city where you have to deal with distractions. But if you have a yeshiva, you have a proper Jewish shtetl, you have the yeshiva, you have a spiritual, holy infrastructure in your town or in the city, you take the animals also, but you don't have to run away from the city because the city itself is the way it's supposed to be. In the time of the growing up in the land, in the land of Canaan, at that time there was no infrastructure. There was no yeshiva. There was no beis medrash. There was no cheder. You had to get away, with your animals. But here, Yehuda went, set up proper institutions. They can still take the animals out, but I think they were still kind of settled, focused in one place. But anyway, that's the way that I imagine it. I don't know, but I think that having the yeshivas is still helpful. You can be a shepherd. You still have to send your children to school, right? Unless so.
Maybe
I don't know.
Maybe they had the internet class they got from Chabad online.
Right. As long as you have Wi-Fi or you have cell phone service in your pasture.
I used to live in a place when there was a lot of shepherds, so in Kazakhstan, and there is a lot of places. That's what the people, and it was not easy to send their children to school because even in our time, because the transportation, all kinds of things, and it should be there's a huge land in order for lots of kettles, yeah. So it's a huge. They even need to deliver some food to them because they were not able to come. I'm talking specifically about shepherds.
Yeah,
so,
interesting.
That's why my question came from. So.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure how exactly they ran the shepherd situation, but it's definitely a interesting thing to think about how they had their beis medrash, or maybe it was a moving beis medrash that went with them. Also, in those days they didn't have so many books. The school was mostly the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have too many books. It's easier to move a person than to move a whole library, right?
Mm-hmm.
The library was in the brain. So you move the person can walk along. The school can be a moving school. So maybe they didn't have to come back to the shtetl. Yeah, the malamed goes, with where the kids are. So the Parsha opens up with Yosef being asked by his father to swear that he's going to bury him in the land of Israel. And then Yosef is told that his father is sick, and he brings his sons Menashe and Ephraim to get blessings. Menashe and Ephraim, and we have Yosef puts Menashe on his left, which is the right of Yaakov, the older one, and he wants the right hand to be on Menashe because he is the firstborn, and Ephraim was on Yosef's right, which would be Yaakov's left. So Yaakov asks, who are these? And, it's Menashe and Ephraim, and he switches his hands. And Yosef tries to correct his father. Menashe is the older one, put your right hand on him. And he says, I know. He'll also be great, but his younger brother will be greater. So something, firstly, which is written, straight out in the verse, you don't have to interpret it, is you clearly see Yaakov's blessings are not just, a blessing. A blessing being, without knowing who you're talking to, just give, generic blessings, and it's just, well wishes. Yaakov's, I'm sorry? Yeah, Yaakov's blessing is a prophecy, and it's empowering. It's giving specific energy, drawing specific energy down to the specific individual who's the recipient of the blessing that fits what they need. So the blessing is kind of being channeled specifically from Yaakov to Yosef, and specifically in what they need. Even though when we read the words of the blessing, we don't find that Yaakov says to Menashe, you should have this blessing. Blessing number 1, 2, and 3. Ephraim, you should have blessing 4, 5, and 6. He says the same thing to both of them. Right? To Menashe and Ephraim, he says the same words. He doesn't have anything different that he says to Menashe or Ephraim. He's putting his right hand on Ephraim, his left hand on Menashe. It's a big deal for Yosef, it's a big deal for Yaakov. And Yaakov says, I know, I'm doing it this way because I'm channeling the blessings that they need. And Ephraim is getting these blessings, Menashe is getting these blessings, even though I'm using the same language. It's coming from the same person, but the different recipients of the blessing, and each one's getting what they need. Something that comes to mind when I think about this is when the Rebbe would give out letters. If somebody had a baby, the Rebbe would write a letter, Mazel Tov, with a blessing. He had a bar mitzvah, the Rebbe would write a letter, Mazel Tov, with a blessing. Getting married, a letter with a blessing. When the Rebbe would give out dollars, the Rebbe would tell each person, blessing and, bracha v'atzlacha, blessing and success. By a farbrengen, we would hold cups with some wine, and the Rebbe would say, l'chaim v'livracha, to life and the blessing. And, one way of looking at it is, well, just the generic blessing, everybody gets the same thing. And, it's not, it wasn't a personal blessing, it's just, I got a letter from the Rebbe, and the Rebbe wrote it to me, and he wrote it to thousands of others, the same text, The difference is only it was addressed to my name, but otherwise it's the same, and therefore it's not personal. And what this just the story highlights is that the blessing of a tzaddik it may be the same words, that many people are getting the same language in the blessing, but the energy that flows in those words is tailored to the recipient of the blessing. And I may have received a letter that was identical in the text to many other people, but in that blessing that the Rebbe is giving me is a specific, unique blessing for me. And just as Yaakov, is saying, I know his future, he'll be greater. They'll both be great, but he'll be greater. The Ruach HaKadosh, the divine spirit that's upon a tzaddik, knowing what is in the future of every individual, knowing what blessings they need, channeling those blessings to that person, even if they seem like they're just generic blessings, is something that's interesting to take from this story. But about the whole conversation with Menashe and Ephraim, the story is an interesting story. Yosef thinks that Menashe should have Yaakov's right hand. Ephraim thinks that, Yaakov thinks that his right hand should be on Ephraim. Why did Yosef, he knows that his father is a great spiritual giant. If anybody knew, Yosef knew. And why is he arguing with his father, saying, well, put your right hand on him, he's the Bechor? Maybe because he was blind, as it says that his sight had diminished, he was assuming that that was a mistake. It was a mistake. All right, so in a simple reading, you can conclude very easily that Yaakov couldn't see well, and therefore he's just helping him out, saying, you probably think that I put the right one on my right because he's older, so he's on my right. So I'm telling you, I prearranged them to be the one that's on my left to be on your right, so you don't have to slit your hands. So that would be a technical answer, which would be acceptable in the simple reading of the story. But knowing who Yaakov is, that he's somebody who sees the future, he's not just saying, I know that he's Menashe and he's Ephraim. And Yosef, when he's telling him, put your right hand on him, Yosef knows who his father is. Yosef was a tzaddik himself. And, he knows who his father is, and that's why he's bringing him to get the blessings. He knows the power of the blessings of Yaakov. Is he really worried that Yaakov's doing this because he doesn't see well? I mean, on a simple level, yes. But on a deeper level, we would say that Yosef knew that his father is doing it intentionally. But he had a little bit of a different opinion about who should get the stronger blessing. In Yosef's opinion, Menashe, and as Yosef says, Menashe is the firstborn. Therefore, put your right hand on him. In Yosef's opinion, Menashe really should get the blessings. In Yaakov's opinion, it's Ephraim that's supposed to get the stronger blessing. Why? What's the difference between the perspective of Yosef and the perspective of Yaakov? So if we think about Menashe and Ephraim, Menashe and Ephraim, their names, Menashe and Ephraim. Menashe was named Menashe, and I believe that this is something that was discussed in previous years as well. Just a refresher if this is something that you recall hearing before from Rabbi Farkash. I've heard it from Rabbi Farkash too. Menashe was named Menashe. Why? Ki nashani Elohim et kol amali vet bet avi. God made me forget all of my struggles in my father's house. Ephraim was named Ephraim, ki hifrani Elohim be'eretz ani, because God made me to be fruitful in this land of my this poor land, or land of my affliction. So Menashe is God made me forget. Ephraim is that God made me to be fruitful.
It's interesting, because when I lived in Singapore, a lot of the Iraqi Jews, one of the family names was Menashe. I don't know if there's significance in that, but yeah.
I don't know, but maybe they chose that name because they connected with that message of Kinashani. Yeah. The idea of Menashe is trying not to forget. Right? God made me forget because things are good now, but I want to hold on to my past. I don't want to forget. He's naming Menashe to kind of remember it. So it's being in exile and trying to hold on to trying to hold on to the past, what was before exile, to be able to get through it. So it's an uncomfortable relationship with exile. It's a relationship with exile where I'm kind of fighting with the exile, trying not to forget where I come from and not get washed away in exile. That's what Menashe represents. Ephraim is that God made me to be fruitful. Is where I'm not kind of fighting with the exile, but I am living it up in exile. I am maximizing what exile has to offer, and I'm gaining from it. I'm not just not getting swept away and being able to hold on, as what Menashe represents, but Kifrani Elohim, that God is making me to be successful and to be gaining from being in exile. And these two aspects, Manasseh and Ephraim, are both there. And Joseph experienced both. And he named his sons for both themes, Manasseh and Ephraim. He named one son Manasseh, one son Ephraim. But what is the more important, or the primary mode that a Jew should have in exile? Yosef was of the opinion that Manasseh is the primary mode. Manasseh is the firstborn. Manasseh is what comes first. The first step in order to survive exile is you have to realize that you're in exile, hold on to what you've got, and not allow exile to overcome your to take over. So the first step is to not be influenced negatively in exile and to be able to hold on to our roots, not to be swept away. Survival. And as a Jewish community in exile, the first step is holding on to our tradition and not allowing it to not trying to make sure that exile doesn't make us lose it. That's Manasseh. Ephraim is taking advantage of exile. That from the darkness we have even greater light. From the painful experiences of exile and from the concealment that we have in exile, we not only survive, but we gain from the exile. That the exile makes us to be stronger than we would be without it. That's being fruitful, that's gaining and growing as a result of the pressures of exile, of galus. Yosef argues with his father. He says, the main thing that you need in exile is to hold on, not to forget. That's the strongest thing. And Yaakov agrees with him, and he says, I know, my son, I know. Manasseh will also be great. You need Manasseh. You need that feeling of not allowing yourself to assimilate into the exile and be overtaken by the exile. But that's not the purpose of going into exile. Ultimately, exile is not just a state that we happen to be in and unfortunately we ended up in, but there's a purpose to the exile. The exile is supposed to allow us to reach higher levels, to achieve greater things than we could if we weren't ever put into exile. It's to come out stronger and better because of the exile and not just to survive it. So Yaakov is saying to Yosef, yes, Manasseh is important, Manasseh is great, but Ephraim is what it's really all about. Ephraim is the purpose of being in Egypt. Ephraim is the purpose of this whole exile. And therefore, my emphasis and my right hand is on Ephraim.
I see that there are two blessings here, both of them. First it says, Malach Goy Lotin Korra, that's the first one. When he should bless the land. And then it says, Ephraim Ki Menashe. Why the two blessings? That's the question. And it says that he blessed Joseph, and then it says, so, are there two blessings? Is this one blessing? Who is being blessed? Is Ephraim and Manasseh being blessed? Is Joseph being blessed? It's a little confusing what's going on there. In verse 16 it says, may the angel who redeemed me,
Yeah.
And then on the next page,
So what do you think?
I don't know. Which is the blessing?
Well, they're both blessings. The first initial blessing, on page, on verse 16, right? V'yikarvem Shemi v'Shem Avotai Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov v'yidgu larav b'kerev haaretz, right? So the angel who redeemed me from all trouble should bless these youth, and they should be called the names of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov should be called upon them, and they should multiply, right? So that's one blessing. And after the conversation about who's going to, the right hand and the left hand,
Right.
So he says, he's also, he says he's also going to be great, but his younger brother is going to be greater, right? And then he blesses both of them together. Yisimcha Elohim ke'Ephraim u'ke'Menashe, that Israel should be blessed through you, that people should say that Hashem should make you to be like Ephraim and Menashe. Is that last one a blessing to them, or is just telling them this is what's going to be? That people, I'd say that's also a blessing. If you tell somebody that people should wish that they are like you, that's a pretty strong blessing. That means the things will be so well that everyone will bless themselves that they should be like you.
They almost they seem like they got two blessings.
Yeah. So it sounds like he cut his father off in mid-blessing. All right. Says, 1 second. All right. But yeah, good question. I'm not sure I have a good answer for that. If anybody has anything to share, you're more than welcome. So, just to conclude that idea for us, the blessings of Menashe and Ephraim, the lesson for us from these blessings is Menashe is important. Menashe is important. We have to remember, we have to hold on and not get weakened by